everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers. Seekers of happiness and joy. Seekers of a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
This weekend, I frantically put up all of our Christmas lights because everyone knows we're in Minnesota, right? Uh-huh. So it was kind of nice. It wasn't nice.
No,
it was
40s.
So I was like, I got to get the Christmas lights up right now. So Saturday, I got them all up, and no kidding, it snowed 30 minutes later.
So it was you. It's kind of like...
Yeah, so it was me.
So every time I wash my car, it's going to rain. So I'm just going to start telling everyone on the pod, oh, by the way, I'm washing my car this week, FYI.
Totally. But I was in a little bit of fall frantic, holidays are coming kind of state, right? Gotta get this stuff done. Gotta get these things off my checklist.
Right. I agree. I think everybody is feeling great pressure to get stuff done right now.
Yeah, and I was just thinking anxiety is generally a little higher than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'd say the rising tide of anxiety, the tide's pretty high right now.
Oh, that's such a good way to say that. And you're talking about, you don't mean for you mean just in general.
Just in general.
Yes. Yeah. I've noticed that too in the multiple companies that I work with. That is so true. There's the way I would even describe it a little further is it isn't just anxiety. It's this amped up energy that is attached to more emotion. It's people feel more emotional right now, and then you add the anxiety of something on top of it, and people are behaving kind of badly, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. I know that sounds judgy. I don't mean it to sound judgy, but people aren't operating in their best selves a lot of the time right now.
Right. I angstily put up the Christmas lights.
Merry Christmas!
Merry effing Christmas. For me, what I was thinking about while I was doing that, was we talk about this a lot. There's an expectation. The expectation is that we have the Christmas lights set up, right? But personally, I've been very, very busy.
Yes.
Been stretching myself really thin.
You have, yeah.
And was it really all that important to get the Christmas lights up? Probably not. And I was just thinking, am I just making life harder for myself by trying to do these things, especially these tradition things that maybe I could let go on a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I like this that you're talking about, that you said you make things harder on yourself. And I think we all do that. I think we all make things harder on ourselves than necessary. Yesterday, I had the same thing happen, totally different topic, but it was kind of the same thing. One of the things that I used to do a lot is I would almost sabotage myself. So what I mean is I would have an idea of something that I really wanted, or that I was trying to show I could do, or just something like that, some sort of really deep desire. And then I would get kind of a fear that I couldn't have it for whatever reason. But what if, right? That whole living in the what if instead of what is. I was just so good at that. And as a result, though, I would end up sabotaging the things that I would really want, because even if I did get them, I had attached so much energy around what if I can't, and what would this look like, that I almost talked myself out of it. It happened a lot. And that was a pattern that was really ingrained in me for a really long time. And I feel like yesterday I had that happen in a really little small thing, but I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Right. And it was so Mitch actually called me out on it, which he usually is. So he's
usually not calling you out on things.
Never. No, he's so kind and so patient. And I said something and he said, Melissa, it's like you're sabotaging yourself. And as soon as I heard that word, I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm making this so much harder than I need to.
Yeah.
And it was around something completely stupid, by the way. It was like a Christmas thing, you know? Mm-hmm. So it was not a consequential subject, but I had so much energy built up around it that I was making it way harder on myself. Of all the ways I was thinking about it, I was spending so much energy thinking about it.
So it seems to me, I just lump you and I into that, but we could, maybe it's broader, tend to make things more complicated or do more and do more until the point where it's like too much.
Yes.
Or it, like you said, it causes a ruckus.
Right.
So
right.
Why do some of us tend to like try to do more, commit more, ship more, produce more?
Yeah.
Instead of going the other way, which should be like simplifying, do less, right?
Yeah.
There must be like a human tendency in there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love the question. And see, now you pose the question. So now, according to the podcast, I have to answer first.
Yeah, those are the podcast rules.
You thought of the creative question first. So then whoever says the question, the other one.
Putting you on the spot.
I think a lot of the reason that we do these things is habit. I think it's habitual. This need to prove is habitual. And I don't think that we actually, in our souls, really believe that, but we just do what's habitual. It's easier. It's easier to not think about it differently. It's easier to not change a habit. It's like, for example, we're talking Christmas is coming up. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, certainly it's the holidays, Jewish holidays, several other holidays. So there's amped up family expectation in here as well. Lots of expectation. The season of expectation is upon us. And so much of those seasonal things are family tradition, habits. This is what we do to make this look and feel a certain way. And I think we do that in our day-to-day stuff too.
Yeah.
Why do you think?
Ever, I think that certainly part of it is habit. But I think as someone who is, I'd say a high producer, right? Like at work, I produce a lot.
Yeah.
On my side projects, I produce a lot.
Yeah.
It's just probably part of my own self-worth. Yeah. This is my own internal thing. My own self-worth is the amount of stuff I can do. So really in that way, more is more, right? But more is not more. More generally leads to either
crash and burn.
Yeah, me being crabby, doing it and being crabby, or the result is not what I would intend. But yeah, I think for me, it's part of my the identity I've made for myself. And I don't think anyone else expects it. Actually, I wrote this thing. We're doing this planning thing.
Yeah.
And an expectation I have for myself. This might sound crazy. Have you ever heard of this is started in the software world where you'd have computer programmers, and then some of the computer programmers we would call 10xers, which means that they could produce 10 times the amount of code as their peers. Right? So 1 in 50 programmers was a 10xer. So they produce whatever is about their, makeup.
Right.
And so I always want to be a 10xer.
Yeah.
I was that when I was a programmer. I am that.
Right.
As a business owner.
As a human.
And I am that as a human.
Yeah.
And I wrote that and I shared that with my wife and she's like, what on earth are you, what? Why would you want to be, why would that be a goal of yours? And I was like, actually, that's a pretty good question.
Hey, do you think it would be really fun or really scary to have our spouses on a podcast with us?
Yeah, that would be an episode. But that there for me, right. It would be an example of like, I feel part of my identity is a super high output person.
Yeah.
But it's not, I'm not saying that, I'm not bragging that. I'm just,
no, I know you're not.
I'm more saying like, that's not in a lot of ways a good behavior.
Well, but hang on a second. But don't you just think though that coming back that is what you are putting an expectation on yourself, right?
Totally.
So there it is. It's the setting extreme expectations. And
I'm much harsher on myself than other people are.
Yes, we
like
all
if
are.
I don't do it, then I feel bad. If I don't do it, other people don't probably even notice or care.
Well, and I'm trying to recover from being this way. I don't do a great job, as you can see my calendar. No one else does, but I feel the same way, and it is very, very stressful. And the funny part about that is when you have such high expectations of yourself, you set more and more high bars because you just think, oh, well, that was a really, really hard goal, and I achieved it. Why didn't I make it harder? So there's even a little energy behind that that's like,
right.
Even though I knew this was really, really hard and I did it, it's like, there's no space for grace in this. It's just like, you should have made it higher. Next time you will. And you don't really verbalize. I don't verbalize that that's how I think about it. But I guess now that you're talking about it, I'm like, yep, I do that too.
Melissa and I are huge self-awareness nerds. We've been working on this stuff for a really long time, and we love talking about it and sharing it with all of you. We've actually brought all of the stuff we've made into an online course, and we think it's really great. The course starts by learning about yourself and how your mind-body connection works. It dives into your thoughts and feelings, and then helps you learn how to become your true, authentic self. Start your journey today. Head to theselfawarenessjourney.com to learn more and sign up. Have you ever been flipping through Netflix and then watched one of these documentaries on minimalism? Like people who like sell all their stuff and then just like live in a van.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Are you talking about those two dudes? There were these two dudes.
Yeah, there's one about two guys that did that.
Yeah, I watched that one. That was really cool.
I know.
That's what they did. And then they went around to like bookstores and did free speaking events on how to become minimalists. And they were,
I know.
And they were,
sometimes I look at that, I'm like, ooh, that looks good.
You would never do that. Well, actually, maybe you would.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm spending a moment dreaming about this, and the only thing that I think is, well, I do have children. They'd need, well, that's okay. There are cell phones.
Your children are all grown, and you doing that is totally acceptable. Me doing that with young kids at home would be completely unacceptable. Yet it is kind of like a fantasy. Like when I snap, I'm just going to be like a guy in a van. Not own anything.
Oh, I love it. So we're making
I'm joking about that, right? But what I'm actually more saying is that isn't it funny that a fantasy of mine isn't going on some vacation or doing something. It's like actually living a simpler life. A fantasy of mine is living a simpler life.
Yeah.
That seems insightful.
It does seem really insightful.
For me.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? If you look at your life, if you look at my life, we don't have complicated lives. We're just busy.
No, I agree.
I mean, neither one of us are, members of this and have this and do that. Like we have like a outlet, like you have tennis. And you have your family and a cabin but it's not crazy over the top. There are lots of humans that have way more, a larger footprint in terms of what society expects of them. And yet we still feel such tremendous pressure. So I think like that's interesting to think about, right? Is the reality a simpler life, or is the reality a simpler mindset?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the mindset that we have is produce, 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 achieve, 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 be better than everybody else, work harder than not in judgment against them, but in judgment against ourselves. We both do that.
Yeah, a simple, like you're right, because there are some things that I would say like that I can do, that I'll do, right, or produce, or like running the business, right? Some people will look at that and say, "Oh my goodness, that is super complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, right? We have like multiple business models, we have multiple go-to-market strategies, we have a fairly complex architecture for like my various businesses, right?"
Yep.
To me, that's not hard at all. That's not complicated.
No,
that doesn't cause chaos, right? But my mindset in it, like you're saying, is that this all makes sense. I can operate it with no problem. It's easy for me. That's a mindset. That's, the reality is it does have a lot of moving parts and it is complicated.
Right.
But I don't ever think of it that way, so it's not that for me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So shifting your mindset around things that might be causing a little bit of ruckus is interesting.
Yeah. And I think that it seems like when something when we get triggered by something, in that complication, whatever it might be, it could be work, it may be at home. And, I said something about the holidays because we're right in the middle of the holiday season too. So you have all these other expectations that are completely separate from your normal ones. And what's the mindset that you're going into it there too? Because boy, oh boy, I used to make 98 dozen cookies every year. 98 dozen. And the mindset...
That's 98 times 12.
I don't even know. Ridiculous amounts of cookies and caramels and chocolate. And I love doing it, but it became a stressor because there were so many. I would start the day after Thanksgiving. I would have this whole process, but then everything else got busy too, and I still had this process, and I had these 80 other processes, and my mindset was one of, there's no flexibility. This is what we do. This is just what I do, right?
Yeah. So, what would you suggest, like just tactically?
Yeah.
As we move into the holidays, which is generally a busy season for everyone, work kind of still continues. For us, work gets a little lighter, but certainly family stuff amps up.
Right.
So, like, how do we not get wrapped around the axle this coming year like we do all other past years?
Yeah.
How are we going to avoid it this year?
What's really cool about this conversation is it's more of a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. I mean, you're asking a really good proactive question.
Oh yeah, right. Like we're just after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Where we know that the rest of the holiday season is going to unfold, and how are we going to get ourselves in the right headspace?
Yeah.
And mindset to navigate through.
Well, and again, I'm not always just about the head. To me, it's the emotions and the feelings that are attached. And I think a lot of times when we get going faster, and I think this is, for me, the key of this whole conversation is recognizing when we're spread too thin, recognizing when we have angst, recognizing when we're over our skis on projects, on expectations, on habitual patterns that are stressing us out. Rather than slowing down, we speed up. And to me, a proactive approach to this whole thing would be the minute you're sensing in your body, in your energy, in your heart, in your mind that you're in angst, is to just slow down for even a minute. What if we just did that? Like for example, going into the holiday season or going into planning for work or, anything that's a quote project. What if we just sat and said, how do I want to feel and be in this? How do I want to be with this? I already know mentally the things that are going to get checked off the list because that's just what happens. But when this is over and I look back, how do I want to be recalling how I really felt, how I was? What do I really want to be? Do I want to be present? Do I want to be more light than normal? Do I want to be comfortable? Do I want to feel creative? What's the most important feeling that you want to bring in? And because I think all things flow from that. We lie to ourselves constantly and tell us it's all what we think. We lie about that all the time. And boy, oh boy, we lie about it for days and days and months to ourselves. Like if I just think this way, I just think that way, I just think this way. What if the mindset simply was, I'm going to come back to a more basic question of myself rather than these complex questions that I keep asking. And I'm just going to say, how do I want to be in this?
Yeah.
That's interesting, right?
I like these setting your intention early, really early. Like we talk about that first for things that maybe are about to happen. Like before I walk into this meeting, I'm going to set my intention. Before I have this conversation with my spouse, I'm going to set my intention.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, let's set the intention for the holidays right now, a month before it happens.
Yeah. Alone,
right?
And without the input of what other people think you should say and do and be. It's alone. And what are you choosing that is in your best interest?
Yeah.
How do I want to be in this? Because Christmas or the other holidays will come and go. I will do all the same hustle and bustle. And I can either feel angst and stressed and tired and almost like, oh, just get this over with. Or wouldn't it be cool if I just was like, I still want to do all those other things, but what I'm not going to do is replace my good feeling with those things. So I want to have the perfect meal for when my family's over, and I want to feel good in the having of it. But if all of a sudden I don't feel good because I couldn't get 2 pies made, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, and it no longer made me feel good, and I just powered through anyway, what's the point?
Yeah, right.
What's the point?
Here's a question for you. If you set that intention for yourself, right? Are you going to share it with your family? Like, I intend to be this way during the holidays?
No, I don't. That's usually just like an internal thing. Yeah. And I say this a lot in coaching, especially when you're trying something new. When you're in partnership with yourself and your inner being, as we talk about your true self, your authentic self, it's your inner being self, right? When you are in the process of listening to your inner being more, it's not natural for many people. For some it is. People could call that prayer. People could call that all sorts of things. However, when you're in partnership with yourself in something new, I often will say, don't share it. Don't share it. Just be it. Because by sharing it, the more you talk about it, then other people feel obligated or like they get to weigh in on it in a way that is not appropriate. Because whatever advice they give you about you, they are giving it to you based on how they want to feel based on what you're doing. It's just natural human tendency. Well, why don't you just go do this? Well, because that doesn't feel right for me, but you're saying it would make you feel better if I did that. And it's not a selfish thing. It's not people being mean-spirited. It's just the way humans work. So when you're
they're trying to be helpful, but it's not very helpful.
Yeah. So I really think I really feel when we're in this process of being intentional, quietly going about your business and setting that tone, that resonant tone, people around you will change.
Yeah.
Because they're picking up on it. They're picking up on that all the time.
So I'd say this is the homework for all of our self-awareness journey listeners and ourselves is take some time for yourself.
Yeah.
Really think about your intention, how you want the holidays to feel for you. And be really purposeful about cultivating that.
Absolutely. And this is in a proactive state, but don't feel like you failed when all of a sudden you find yourself amping up and you go, oh, darn it, there I am. Like, I didn't do that. I'm a failure. Rather than
just remember, right?
Come back.
Just remember.
Come back. Just come back. You can begin again. That's the famous meditation phrase when you're learning to meditate. Just begin again. Same with this.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.